Masculinity. When this term is mentioned, certain behaviors may come to mind. We may even attach specific emotions to this term, masculinity. Now, I want to invite you to think of the men in your life. What emotions or personal traits come to mind then? The chances are that you are likely to have a wide range of characteristics and emotions, which should serve as a reminder that people who identify as males are not a monolith. So why then does Western society, specifically the United States, consciously and subconsciously often operate within this man box, perpetuating and even celebrating masculinity as dominance, aggression, and a lack of emotion? See, we've been socialized toward popular culture's archetype of males who have displaced emotions and appetite for sexual conquest, aggression, and risky behaviors. Boys will be boys is what we often hear when trying to explain away troubling male behavior as if it's a natural part of masculinity. The fact of the matter is that these male behaviors are hyperized, toxic, and an unnatural version of masculinity that is not even rooted in genetic differences. An award-winning author, Thomas Page McGee, said that most of us experience gender conditioning so young that we misunderstand the relationship between nature and nurture, culture and biology, fitting in and then being oneself. Now, over the course of history, people believed that boys and girls were fundamentally different. But as we know, sex is a biological term that relates to which chromosomes one has. XX for female and XY for male. We also know that gender is a social construct which is a fluid spectrum of masculinity and femininity. In addition to that, we know that the gender binary is a social construct, and there are many people who identify as non-binary, intersex, gender non-conforming, trans, and cisgender, as well as other identities. But to examine the concept of sex and gender, a psychological test was given to 50,000 girls, and the same psychological test was given to 50,000 boys. The test results from both formed a bell curve. The test revolved around three categories: nurturing and courtship, physical and emotional pain threshold, and problem solving in response to stress. Now, if the two bell curves were superimposed onto one another, the overlap would be 90%, essentially demonstrating that boys and girls are largely the same. Parts of the test that didn't overlap, the shoulders or the margins, often result in feminine and masculine outliers, but oddly enough actually become stereotypes and are later socially accepted as what normally differentiates boys from girls. These test results show that typical boy behavior is not hyper nor toxic by nature, but instead more aligned with how girls interact with the world and vice versa. So what happens? Well, as educators, we know that the brain is plastic, and behaviors and self-perception can change over time with experiential influences and the environment. So if a boy is constantly told by his environment not to express his natural sensitivities, but rather to express aggression and dominance for social acceptance, it's inevitable that that boy will change to fit the stereotype. We live in a patriarchal system that gives power to boys and men, but simultaneously hurts them while oppressing women and other people of all genders. And unfortunately, stereotypes and systems of oppression are often upheld in traditional school environments. Boys are socialized into sucking it up and not showing weakness. This results in only 30% of boys who are bullied to report this to a trusted adult, impacting their identity and thwarting their development of communication. This behavior can be seen in the classroom as a shrug of the shoulders, as a response, and being too cool to care. Thus, healthy relationships becoming elusive and academic exploration becoming stymied. For example, boys are twice as likely to drop out of high school than others, and they are less likely than girls to enroll in college. These social pressures projected onto boys to fit a stereotype manifest into serious and lifelong issues. Boys and men are less likely to reach out for help, especially around mental health. Boys of color, specifically black boys, receive harsher discipline in schools, creating this pipeline to the prison system. After teaching middle school and high school aged boys, I have learned that schools must play a vital role in rejecting the status quo and foster a healthy masculinity in our boys, one that is caring, one that is compassionate, and one that is sensitive. And middle school is a critical time to do this work. As a teacher and co-founder of Seattle School for Boys, I want to share with you 2 frameworks that we use that we believe helps to foster a natural masculinity. First is research done by Bruce J. Ellis and Thomas Boyce in their theory around the Orchid and Dandelion hypothesis. Their research suggests that children are genetically dispositioned to having certain sensitivity levels depending on the environment. For example, a dandelion child is seen to be able to thrive in various environments, whereas an orchid child can thrive under good care and intentional practice, but is likely to wilt if neglected. Now, seeing these as a spectrum, there are variations of these 2 groups, but we do believe that it's important to use this framework and research to uphold and foster a natural masculinity. The second framework, and knowing that the brain is plastic, is around a mental model that is problem-based called the Ssb Learning Cycle. This is a 6-step learning process that increases student interest and intrinsic motivation. Evidence has shown that it increases learners' engagement in higher order thinking, which in turn deconstructs bias and generalizations. An example of what we did was presenting the problem to our boys, and the question was, what's the difference between a real man and a good man? And the first step for these boys is to generate an initial thought. This allows them to safely bring in their prior knowledge, and it also allows teachers to conduct a pre-assessment. The second step, which is vital, is bringing in multiple perspectives. Doing this, you get to deconstruct bias, you can validate the initial thoughts, or you get to see that there are multiple ways to think about a particular issue. For teachers, this allows you to conduct a formative assessment. From the multiple perspectives, students move to the third step, which is reflecting, research, and revising. And so this reflection is students taking a self-assessment opportunity to see the work that they've done with the multiple perspectives, conduct research that is fact-based and rooted in media literacy, and then revising their initial thoughts. The fourth step is to create. Create a hypothesis or create a product that helps to address the problem or address the question. This can look like a series of assessments. The fifth step is to report out. So this is where students get to voice their understanding of the particular issue via presentation, via project, via traditional essay, and this allows students to have a thorough understanding of the initial prompt. For teachers, this serves as a summative assessment. And then the final step is call to action. Based on the information that students have learned, what can we do to make society better? And those are the steps that we use in our second framework to help spark engagement, deconstruct toxic masculinity, and uphold a natural sense of masculinity. So, in order to preserve and promote this, we must teach boys to become collaborative learners, creative thinkers, and compassionate leaders who genuinely care about our diverse global community. I hope that this was helpful to you, and I look forward to staying in touch. Thank you.